ticks me off. I mean, I'm not mad that Kris Kristofferson said that. I think that's swell, and I love Kris Kristofferson, but I'm saying it's interesting that it took a plane crash to make some of this happen.
I want to talk about, I would imagine you'd have some kind of view of this, and I want to talk about just a little bit the theory that perhaps the reason Rick did not receive that legitimacy during his lifetime, it seemed as if he was forever going to be, and they made a big deal out of him dropping the Y off of his name. It seemed that he was always going to be Ricky Nelson, son of Ozzie and Harriet. And the Ricky that we saw come in and say, "Hi, Mom, hi, Dad, hi, Dave." Do you think that was part of it?
I think it was less that than the fact that his music was extremely simple as opposed to sophisticated. So you take this. Now, I want you to know you were talking to a girl who does not know a whole lot about music except from just, like you say about art, I know what I like. But it seems that his music was very clear and simple and fundamental. And when you got into the 60s where you had these convoluted, incredibly innovative things by the Beatles and stuff, I think it had to do more with the kind of, I don't perceive it as immaturity, but what could have been attached to him as being a teen idol in a time when the world of music was somewhat immature, than the fact that he was the hi mom, hi dad, associated with the sort of goofiness of those indeed white picket fence kind of sitcoms that we had him in. I think it had to do that his music wasn't convoluted, and that there wasn't a particular appreciation for that simplicity at that time.
Tell me about the first time you met Rick.
Well, as I said, I was sort of a grown-up. I was in my 20s, and we were living in Washington, D.C. It was the night of it was the night of an election. This is how political I am. I guess it was 1968, and I was totally uninterested in the outcome of the election because Ricky was playing at the Cellar Door in Georgetown, and I went over to I was working at the Washington Post, and no one would come with me to see him. And so I went, including my husband, and so I went over there alone, and I stood in line, and they said to me, "I'm sorry, but we can't let you in because this is how long ago it was. You're wearing slacks." And I explained to them, "You can't send me home. It'll be too humiliating. I'll never get out of the house again. I've told everybody I'm going to see Ricky Nelson tonight." And I told them the story of sitting in front of the house and how pathetic I used to be. And they let me in, even though I wasn't up to the dress code. And they apparently told someone in his band, the Stone Canyon Band, that this pathetic girl was there from Beverly Hills who really wanted to see him and had never met him. And so after the show, which was well attended and a real intimate show, it was a real intimate room, and he was a delight to listen to. I mean, it was real nice and terrific to hear him. He hadn't written Garden Party or anything yet. They invited me upstairs. This guy came over and said, "Are you the girl from California?" And I said, "Yeah." And they said, "Would you like to come up and meet Rick? Is the Pope Catholic?" And I said, at a total loss for words, this woman who makes her living at it. And went upstairs, and right away when I walked in, he was kind of looking down, and he said, "What's your name? I'll give you an autograph." I mean, he knew that I wanted one, and so I told him. And we chatted for a few minutes, and he was real. I mean, shy sounds dopey, but he was kind of shy. And yet he said, "Why don't you stay for a second show?" And I got so flustered, and I threw my hand in front of his face with my diamond ring on, and I said, "Oh, I couldn't possibly. I'm married." I mean, he hadn't asked me to go to bed or to get married. He'd simply asked me to stay for a second show. But nonetheless, I, of course, took it to the limit, as is my wont, and threw my hand. "Oh, no, I have to go home." And then I came home, and I threw down the picture in front of my husband, and I stalked over to the phone. I felt fantastic, and I called my girlfriend, who had sat with me in front of Ozzie Nelson's house all those years, and I said, "You're not going to believe what happened," because only Beverly could have understood the impact that had on me, which was enormous. It was quite something. I met him again subsequently in Chicago. He was playing, and I did about a half-hour interview with him, and in fact was looking for the tape the other day, knowing that I was going to be talking to you, and it was a real painful time for me to interview him because he was so shy. And when I walked into that room, I realized every time I meet this man, I'm going to revert instantaneously to being 14. There's absolutely no way I can be a full-blown adult with him. There's something absolutely primal in my connection to him. And so the interview was somewhat brisk on my part, and he was definitely willing to talk more. And I said to him, you know what, this is making me crazy. I'm getting really nervous. I think I have to leave. And he looked at me. He looked at me as if I had lost several of my own personal marbles, and I kind of backed out. I was a wreck. I mean, there wasn't enough deodorant in the world to get me through that interview. I was a wreck.
Did you ever publish the interview?
No, I never published the interview. I went to Cosmopolitan with it, who I was doing quite a bit of writing for at the time. I didn't have the column yet, and they weren't interested. And of course, that was part of this unfortunate thing that happened to him. You know, he was perceived really in the real prime of his life as having been a has-been. And only in the later years did he sort of pull out of that, and really only in death has that happened. To a degree, not only, but, you know, I mean, when I wrote this column about a year ago, I heard from a lot of people who felt like I did. A lot of people came out of the closet and said, you know, I really have always loved Ricky Nelson, and it was kind of unchic, and now I feel really terrible that I've been disloyal, and I'm glad somebody spoke up about it. I mean, it really pushed a button around the country.
Yeah, it certainly did with me. I loved it. And I wanted to ask you, just incidental from the interview, is there a way you could send me a copy of that article? Do you have any copies of that?
Sure.
I would love to have it.
Oh, sure.
Unfortunately, at the time, you know, it was like somebody had brought the paper in at the office, and I hadn't picked it up that day, and I saw this, and I sat down and read it, and somebody got a hold of the paper before I had a chance to nab it. I thought it was a beautiful, beautiful article.
Oh, no, I would be happy to.
That's great. Want to ask you about this idea of Rick Nelson fans, I being one of them, and I talked to a lady last night. We had her in and interviewed her, who was a super fan of his, and, you know, the kind of fan that saw him 5 times in one weekend in 3 different places, everywhere from Valparaiso to Aurora. So she followed him to see his shows, you know, and was really a super fan. Why do you think it was that the real Rick Nelson fans were so loyal all that time?
Because he touched us in, like I said before, I think he touched us in a real primal place, and he put us back in touch with the girl we've never stopped being. And I think that he also was the kind of man that appealed to women in a, you know, kind of nurturing, mothering. It wasn't like Harriet was enough, you know? We all felt we could certainly do at least as good a job. I mean, I think he wanted to reach out, and he never seemed a man particularly at ease in his own skin unless he was singing. He always struck me as a man who was ill at ease in a social situation. I mean, you could almost perceive that on TV. He never. So I think that there's this, many women nurture this illusion that, you know, they can throw their arms or bodies over somebody. And, you know, I mean, obviously there was a lot of sexual attraction, but I think it also had to do with he touched the girl in each of us, and he touched the mom in each of us. That's what I think.
When you first met him, was he Rick Nelson out of Ozzie and Harriet show?
No, he was my Ricky. He was very disembodied from Ozzie and Harriet show for me, as a matter of absolute fact, from the very beginning. I mean, it was me and him all the way.
So it was more like the Rick Nelson show, also starring.
Yeah, I mean, Ozzie and Harriet were moot points, and certainly by the time I really got involved in the show, because I didn't really watch him growing up, though I know America did, the show was built around him. You know, there was that segment at the end where he sang and kind of closed his eyes, and you just couldn't believe anyone had those eyelashes, and there were all those people bopping up and down, and, you know, I mean, it was a real, in a sense, you know, it occurs to me that those were the first videos. They really were.
Sure.
And that was what you waited and waited and waited for the show to have. That's what I waited and waited for the show to have in any case.
Now, I know that you're not a music critic, and you've already said that you're no musical expert and such, but certainly you must have a view of what do you think Rick Nelson's contribution to music was?
I think he was a real first-string, clear-visioned musician. I mean, I think he had a certain mournful sound. And I will never love a song as much as I loved Lonesome Town. I mean, I don't think I'm capable of loving a piece of music as much as I loved Lonesome Town. I think he did some great stuff, and I'm glad that people don't smirk anymore when they talk about it.
You just answered my next question, which is your favorite Rick Nelson song? I did an interview with Gordon Stoker, the leader of the Jordanaires, and that's his favorite.
Is it?
Also, and he backed it up with Travelin' Man as number 2. And yeah, I certainly think Lonesome Town is one of the absolute most well done songs that I have ever heard. It was just perfect when they first did it, and every time I heard him do it after that, it was just an absolute piece of work.
Yeah, I really loved it. And, even now, it's a real hard song to sing. It doesn't sound like it's real easy. It's kind of like the national anthem, it jumps all around.
Mm-hmm.
And it just, I don't know, cut into my heart in just a great way. I still can't listen to it.
I'm gonna ask you about that if I can get touch sensitive area these days. How do you go about remembering Rick Nelson? Do you ever go back and play those old albums or take out the scrapbook or such?
No, I don't take out the. Well, I guess I have taken out the scrapbook maybe once or twice since he died, to sort of show to my kids. I feel good about it. I feel good about him. I remember him from a time that, like his music, was considerably simple and less complicated and menacing. And he was real representative of that. And so I think back on him with sadness because he's gone, and sadness because he was unappreciated, but with enormous affection because he, it's one-sided affection, it always was, but that was the way the deal was meant to be, that he was real special to me. I mean, every girl growing up, every boy growing up needs an idol. My husband may have had, he's too young to have had Ty Cobb, but whoever he had. But this was the one for me. And so I look at that, and I'm in touch with someone from a very real past that shaped me.
Coming from that personal perspective, how would you like the world to remember Rick Nelson?
Well, as I said, as really a first-string musician or a first-string rock and roll guy, as someone who's, I guess, worth being memorable, as someone who was extremely diligent. I think he was that because he traveled around even when, times were tough. And kind of vulnerable, and maybe a little uncomplicated in a world that idolizes complex things and looks for mystery. I don't know that there was too much mystery about him, and I think that was part of his charm. That's how.
That's great, Judy. I got to tell you, I'm done with my questions, and I want to thank you very, very much. Your interview is absolutely fantastic. I mean it. I'm so lucky to have somebody who uses her words so well. Obviously that's your business, and you do it well every day. But to have somebody that could bring back such crystal clear images of what it was like to be a fan and to do all those things is going to be a wonderful part of the show. And
good. I'm glad.